The following is information that I found at the Jump Point magazine, of which I'm a subscriber for, so these are excerpts from that, and they're important for those who are considering to pick up an Ironclad or already own an Ironclad. Now, Ironclad came from a few different places, and these are some of the other considerations that didn't make it. A lot like the Kraken before it, you can see that the concepts are actually very different. The version B, for example, on the left, would have been a much different ship, more geared towards the cargo than the vehicle. So I'm glad that we ended up getting the one that's in front of you now that is basically those retractable rooftop that can kind of act as an impromptu hangar, improvised hangar if you want to call it that, except for the cargo. Later on in this video, we're going to spend a lot of time on these images blown up, but I just wanted you to see that these are there. You can pause it, you can check these out. The important thing here is it shows how large the crew compartments are, and a few other things such as how the flow of the ship works, defense of the ship, and how it operates. But if you're just watching this for, hey, there's a brand new jump point, and if you're a subscriber, be sure to go over and grab it. And don't forget to subscribe here if you haven't already. That's nothing to do with CIG, but just thought I'd throw it in there. Thank you to my long-term subscribers. So the Assault had one little tidbit here that I thought was very interesting, in that it described that it changed out a tractor beam turret on the interior for a weaponized turret. Now, in the Q&A, they say that it's a weaponized turret, and it didn't really differentiate between the regular and the Assault, which I thought was quite interesting, that they went in depth about that in the jump point. As a reminder, jump points tend to be put together while they're in development, towards the end of development. It's possible and more likely that the Q&A is quite accurate. I would stick to that for that specific information. And into the command module slash relationship with the secondary control modules type situation. You can see some of the development here on the Caterpillar, Super Cat, whatever you like to call it. And you can see that as we expected, the command bridge is much larger than the vehicle because it has a better visibility. It has more, how do I put this? It has more teamwork capabilities. We've learned with other ships that when you put them in a cramped tube and you have everybody kind of only the front where the pilot sits can kind of see what's going on, it can create a lot of problems. In this ship, it looks like there's two seats that can see what else is going on, and other people are working probably the tractor beam sensors and things like that. And it's less than ideal. This ship, though, as a reminder, that's treated more as an escape pod or as a short-range pod. Then the ship is actually immobilized without that small pod module. Whatever version of the version you want to call it, whenever I discuss it with people, it changes every time. That'll do it for the rundown real quick. And I wanted to go back through the Assault for a moment. So this is kind of a free-form video now. And I think the Assault is a real winner, especially now that we've clarified it. While it does not seem to have a lot of tractor beams going on or any, it has enough weaponry and a retractable roof, even though it's smaller. I stand by what my assessment was before, that this ship was very good. I see that the price increase on day 2 of the sale as a indication that CIG even realized that this thing was a little underpriced for what it was. I mean, I think that's the fastest we've ever seen a price increase on a concept ship, literally the second day of its concept ship launch. And into the decks. So this is the more in-depth part. If you jumped ahead, greetings from the past, I guess, future. I'm not quite sure, but welcome. And this is basically, we're going to start with deck 1. So deck 1, as you can see, is dominated by the large cargo area. Now, on the Assault, as a reminder, towards the back area, you would see basically 1/3-ish of the space be taken up by the vehicle repair facility, but we can see some details behind this of the engineering space. And I would infer that both the regular Ironclad and the Ironclad Assault both have this engineering space behind everything going on. It is worth noting that the layout, it really doesn't change much here on either one of them. Once you start stripping away just the size differences of the actual cargo hold, and of course the turret entrances and exits, it's a little different where you would have people positioned maybe on both ships, but in general, they tend to have the same flow. Onto deck 2. If we take a look at Deck 2, what we see is a few insights. Now, this is clearly the Ironclad regular, not the Ironclad Assault, unfortunately. And I think that speaks volumes, it confirms more so what they've already said from CIG's side of house, that look, we threw the Assault together as an idea and we kind of stuck with it as a concept, but we had the real regular Ironclad as the one that's more polished, and it is further along, it is more matured as a concept. And this is basically what we're seeing here. The biggest difference between the Ironclad and the Ironclad Assault at the front of Deck 2 would be that evidence lockup or improvised brig, if you want to call it that, / lockup. Brig is where you would lock people up, for those who don't know. Whatever you wish to call it, it is a secure storage location for things of whatever you choose to store there. And it shows a lower trust environment. It confirms what I've talked about before about how this ship seems to be more welcoming to you're picking up somebody you might be on friendly terms with but don't completely trust, and you're driving them across an area, their cargo and maybe 2 of their vehicles, from one of their outposts to another, picking up a contract, and you don't want them rifling through your stuff. It's the nice way to put it. And then the other side of this, bounty hunting or not so clean bounty hunting, gray area, or even pirate type activities, you can draw your own conclusions about what that would be used for. But on the Assault, this is replaced with an armory. So in the Q&A, we've had this confirmed that space is about the same size, maybe slightly shorter in height, because they have to fit the Nova tanks right underneath is where the ramp is. And that area has the armory. Okay, this is the 3rd time I'm recording this part because I think I've got it. It's a little complicated because I'm trying to be faithful to what we're seeing in the jump point, and I'm also trying to avoid wronging the Q&A or something like that. But on Deck 2 at the back, it starts like a cascade of other decks that kind of feed into each other through staircases. And if we look in the top right corner, so towards the stern of the ship, there is what I believe to be 6 escape pods or suit lockers. And it infers to me that this ship is really made to service 6 crew. And then there is a docking collar. So the room to the left of the 2 in the top right would be what I'm describing. And then the room to the right of that, if you're wondering what that is, and it's not directly connected, that's engineering and modules. Because if on the same page, there's images of some of the large modules, large in size modules, depending on if they're considered extra large or large. It really doesn't matter right now, but I'm just focusing on keeping this all honest. And so the engineering space on Deck 2 is taking over from that doorway in the bottom right corner all the way up, all the way to the other end of the ship. That is all modules and engineering space, and then a gantry, a balcony that overlooks the main engineering space of the propulsion systems. Now, if you take this at face value, that means that the only thing that's like a crew service area on Deck 2 is the front of the ship, and then whichever version you have, the Assault or the regulars. We've already beaten that dead horse, and also the escape pods and docking collar on this deck. And then as you go up the steps to Deck 3 at the back of the ship, you can see that there is as the magazine calls it, the main bridge, which is now in the advertising the command deck that handles tractor beams and on the regular, and what I believe will handle the fabrication on the Assault, and hopefully some remote turrets, but that's me speculating again, and maybe even pilot the ship, as just wishful thinking though, as a secondary option, as many have asked for. At the very least, let's stick to what we know. So it can handle the tractor beams. And then if the tractor beams are replaced with turrets On the Assault, then I'm guessing it's a remote turret deck of the non-man turrets, non-man turret weapons, like the one inside the inside the hangar slash cargo area, depending on what your intended purposes are. Yeah, it kind of provides a huge amount of space that kind of has just been added on. They said in the design work, that's, I think there's going to be more growing out of that area. I refuse to believe that it's just going to be 2 seats. But as we follow that back, what we can see is habitation. So there is habitation on that location that is 6 habs and what may be captain's quarters on the upper deck. So the deck 4 I'm going to go into in a moment. But based on what I can see, there's at least 6 habs. It may be a ship that's kind of a one for all for one type situation where there is not a captain's quarters, or maybe the captain's quarters is inside deck 4, which once again, I'm going to go into in a moment. But I think that this is going to be the captain's quarters. So even though the crew is listed in the specifications as 6, this would actually give you enough habs for 7. However, you could argue that one of the habs could be used for a fighter or another small vessel, or for the vehicle driver slash main vehicle runner. You could argue would have its own hab. Spare for somebody you're picking up if you're doing like search and rescue or something like that. But anyway, that boxy area to the left of the 6 habitations, I believe is a restroom. That's my suspicion. I'm just speculating though. And then there's a table in between the 6 habs, and then what I believe to be food and substance on the back wall. That's me speculating, though. I think there might also be another restroom, or that might even be a captain's quarters cutted in the corner, unless that's just it's just badly rendered, because they are trying to use colors to show you the different floors. And then deck 4 is showing an additional location that's above everything else. And you can see that it is accessible via a stairwell, and that reaches the flight area command module location to fly the ship on the side of the ship. At this point, the terminology is a little bit muddled. I suspect by the time this ship is flyable, we'll be well versed in it, and there'll probably be a few comments updating that. And if people want to update the terminology, please feel free. I'll be sure to try to amplify that as best I can in the comments section, or discuss that. I think that's worth mentioning, is that when these concepts do come out, it would be best for them to have common terminology, at least across a ship maker. So if Drake wants to call every Caterpillar detachable style ship, because remember the Cat has that too, a command module that's flyable, that's great. If they want to call it a runabout or something, or a command sloop, whatever they want to call it, you can have a catchy name. That's perfectly cool. Call them all that, and then just call it like the Mark 1 or the Mark 2, or variants, which typically have names in our world. So yeah, I guess we'll see. I think, like, once again, by the time this thing is flyable, we'll have a much firmer grasp on this. And I dropped a hint earlier on. This is kind of interesting to me, and the Ironclad in general is only as good as the vehicles or the ships or the cargo work you're going to put into it. And I don't think we're completely through the fighters. So this kind of ship, I feel like I have the ability to kind of dovetail it a little bit. On the same jump point, there was a hint of a new Saber, and in John Crew's words at Star Citizen Live on Friday, he stated it was the variant everyone was expecting. So think Saber Raven, but with the center filled in like the Firebird, but actually has EMP or something like that. And it glows green. John Crew again teased everybody because somebody mentioned it's interesting it has green, and he sent eyes back, like surprised, shocked, big eyes, staring eyes, whatever you want to call it, on Twitter. And I think they're going to pull another left fielder for us. I think they're going to just turn around and make it slightly different than the Saber Raven. Everybody's been asking for the Saber Raven. We want to purchase the Saber Raven. And they're like, well, we have to make it slightly different due to contractual obligations or keeping its rarity, etc., etc. And everyone's fine with that, I think. But physically, slightly different. You could even give the Saber Raven, the original Saber Raven +1 extra SCU of storage or SU of speed or something. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of people don't really care about that as much. That if the Saber Raven was even tiny bit better, I think they just want the Saber Raven. I really hope CIG is not yet again being like, we heard you like the Saber Raven and you want to buy it for not remortgaging your house money. So here's the Saber Raven, and it's like, it's gonna have like double the missiles like the Firebird or something silly, or some other ECM that they want to experiment with. CIG, this ain't the time to experiment. You've already teased people with the Saber Raven that's buyable by the masses for a reasonable price. You need to actually sell it now. When you say you want the variant, this is the variant everyone expected, you really need to sell the variant everyone expected, or you're going to have another fall flat on your face type sales situation, like the Firebird. The Firebird was a mistake. The Firebird was a waste of resources by those who made it, and that's a shame. It's a beautiful ship. It's a pleasure to fly the dang thing. There's just one problem. It's not a Saber Raven. It does not have the EMP. It does not have the capabilities of a Saber Raven. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of positioning. And I think more unique fighters that have utility that can do interesting roles will be good for ships like the Ironclad, especially the regular. You know it's going to fit in there. The Assault, it will be an interesting fit, but whatever you can fit, if it fits, it sits. Let's keep the model flowing. And I think these type of fighters would be really, really interesting to me with the use of these type of ships. And I know you're gonna say why. And if you're using this as a combat vessel, I see it as a very, very interesting kind of utility vessel for a small fleet of fighting ships that are running around and they're trying to hold a location, or they're trying to do pirate work or whatever else. And being able to pull this ship out as a twofold situation, especially if, speaking of the Assault again, I know just suggested it might not fit, but if it can fit, that'd be wonderful for that. But adding additional fire support after you've interdicted something, and then having a utility vessel that can literally disable the ability for the enemy to fight back, the enemy to run, continuing to run, are very, very useful in that role. I see it. I see a utility fighter with this ship as something that is really an interesting combo. And then you can, after you've managed to get your gotten goods from the bad guys, or ill-gotten goods from the good guys, being able to then just scoop all the stuff into this ship, and then the little fighter stays outside and escorts you back, and the rest of the fleet's happy because they just got their goods. They stay on location, they stay on station, while this thing runs back to drop it off somewhere at an outpost or some other location, and then it comes back to resupport the fleet and brings extra ammo, brings extra components, whatever the fleet needs from fight to fight to fight to fight. We've seen that in EVE Online. It works really well. And this thing would be a really good location for that type of work. I could also see it for people that want to log off in those small ships, getting that, rude awakening that logging off in a small ship out in the field is kind of not going to work well. But if somebody gets family aggro, or, they suddenly get an emergency they need to take care of, being able to be that person that's kind of a little more passive of the group, but you're like the awesome person that comes through in a clutch. You can put their ship in here. They can go log off in one of the habs in the back of the ship. Based on what we know now, it could change 50 more times, but having a hab with subsistence to support a crew member, and having a spare bunk, um, would be an interesting way to kind of handle that situation. And then, offload them back at port, offload their equipment back off at port, the ship, and then give it back to them when they relog in or something, or put it in the future in a corp hangar and then they can grab it out of there, whatever. But anyway, the point being that there's a lot of nuances to this ship that we're just starting to think about. And the other big thing I think to watch for, and this is me changing gears yet again, but bear with me if you stuck with me this long, a NERSA being parked in this thing as of now is really useful, but only when this thing is super close. So some of the testing we're finding is the NERSA has a very short regeneration range. It's not a big deal when you're on the ground. When you're in FPS combat, when you're in another vehicle, when you're testing stuff like you saw in one of my other videos where I was trying to turn the Tally into a pocket carrier. I'll put that in the cards. That video is pretty good. Just skip ahead to the end. It's pretty good. But the NERSA came through in a clutch. It allowed me to keep my testing going and allowed me to keep me doing my operations without respawning in a medical bed somewhere far away from my stuff and having to claim everything. And when you have groups of people that are a mix of people, that you have casual game players that are going to log in for an hour or two because they heard there's something to fight, or they heard there's a fun contract going on, or a big event going on in the game, or there's a way for them to grind out some money, and we heard you want that ship, oh cool, I'll come in. And then you have your other people that are more dedicated. I see these type of ships as the more dedicated people that has spent more time in the game, and they're kind of the backbone, both logistically in combat and also logistically in peacetime. And I understand some people, when I talk in the comments, when I talk on Discord, when I talk on Reddit, I get some folks in the community kind of really don't want to talk combat at all. I get it. But this ship, this is where I'm going with this. I don't think this ship is going to fully realize its potential unless it's occasionally used for combat, unless it's occasionally, even if it's the ship. Notice I said ship, not I said person, because this may be something that's kind of shared amongst an org, and occasionally somebody who's a diehard industrialist who never is in combat, never in a dangerous space, never in an area where they're in a fight and their org never gets in fights, whatever. You might still see this thing running around, and you just lend it to a friendly org that happens to be just trying to save their outpost from another org or something like that, or needs to emergency ferry a lot of goods out of there because the Van Duel are hitting an area or something like that. And, you might just lend it out, that kind of thing. It's a multitask, multi-purpose ship, but I think this thing really shines when it's in combat occasionally, and it's always got that opportunity value. It's always there. It's always ready to rock. If you're not using it for those things, there's other ships that min-max cargo storage or amount of other ships they can carry or vehicles they can carry. Well, maybe not vehicles. This thing is pretty damn good on vehicles, but as in ships, there's a little bit in your way. You have the gantries, you have the awkwardness of trying to fly in and out of this thing. There's other ships that can do it better, more reliably, time after time after time. And but this ship, I think, shines at that multi-purpose faceting, and on a small scale of this, but it can also do this at the same time. But it can also repackage itself, so to speak, for a completely different kind of mission, and that is pretty dang cool. So this is kind of my Saturday night, kind of going through, adding some of the new information from the Jump Point, which, once again, I'm a subscriber. If you haven't already, consider, I'm not going to plug myself again, consider subscribing to the program over on CIG's website, so robertspaceindustries.com. They have a really cool, if you haven't heard already, subscription process, and Jump Point is one of those products that I use a lot for my lore videos, actually, that has tons of great information made for the community by the devs, by the CIG teams over there, and it is a wonderful thing that is only made possible through the subscriptions. So the Centurion subscriptions, and you're even if you're going to go into something like that, it's $10 a month, 10 USD a month. It's not that bad. And then there's Imperator as well. That I'm a little more iffy on. That's double the price. But I subscribe off and on constantly over the years, and lately they've been really on a roll. I've really liked a lot of their stuff. I'm not going to comment on the freebies each month. That's just icing on the cake to me. But I love supporting the process. And yeah, if that's something you're interested in, remember it's always there. And they have discounts, I think, for the year. So yeah, I think I've done enough plugging for CIG. More importantly, I hope you got information about how you're going to use your Ironclad, even if you got bits and pieces out of a freeform video like this. I think it's worth it. I think it's important to me to get as much information as possible into the community's hands. And I've gotten a little bit of flack in the past on some of my freeform videos about speculation and this and that. And I try to clearly differentiate between the two. And use cases are always speculation, but they're kind of informed speculation based on other ships we already have in the game, ships that we're going to get in the game, and what we're supposedly promised. And yeah, trying to combine multiple information sources into a single coherent message is hard. And it's got to be done. I mean, you've got people that are spending hundreds of dollars on these products, and they are building their fleets around what can support them, their friends, their orgs, and most importantly, their goals. And I've always encouraged that everybody has different goals in this game. And I think that in a large scale verse that we're creating, there's a lot of room for everybody. But I just don't like to see people kind of only getting bits and pieces, signing on the dotted line and getting their CCU chains activated or buying war bond ships. And then they only find out years later when the ship's released or ready to be released that, oh, this ship was nothing what I anticipated. And then you don't have a bunch of other options that were in the past. Oh, I could have got that. I could have got that. Oh, I could have changed it to that. That happened to me in the past. And that's one of the reasons. I have a melted 890 jump for a reason sitting inside my buyback. That'll probably sit there forever. For the very reasons, realizing that this ship is never going to truly be what you need it to be. And realizing over time, there's other ships I could work towards. And that money could be better spent in CCU chains to, and it did, it did get spent on other things like CCU Carracks for 265 USD, I think my Carrack was. It helped me build into my Herc series as well. So I mean, like honestly, like I think that when you think about these things, you got to be careful about just sitting on your laurels without all the information. So if you spent a half hour with me hanging out for tonight, going over this and making the decision, I hope it helped you. Please be sure to, for real, I'm going to give myself a plug now. Drop a comment below if it helped you out, or if it didn't, give me some feedback on that too. And also, if you got some thoughts that could help others. So, hey, based on what we're hearing now, we're seeing now on these images, I'm feeling that this ship is going to not be based on what we were promised or what we're doing with, but it'll be great for this, this, and this, and those type of things I think are only good when we kind of aren't in a bubble. We aren't kind of trying to hide all our cards, and we're kind of helping each other out, making sure we meet each other's goals. All right. That's all I got for now. Take care and have a great weekend.